To call the meeting to order. We have the announcements, please.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. Copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby of this conference room. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please write your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the lobby. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please sign in on that same sheet. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available in the lobby. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Okay, welcome everyone. And we will start by approving the December 21st, 2017 minutes. We have 5 people that will be abstaining: Lowell Richardson, John Daly, Bob Duell, Joshua Blick, and Rob Harmon.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so how many? Oh, yeah, but I mean for that deal. Okay. Let's look at what possible items we can take by consent. Let's look at 2-1, which is case number 218, quadruple 03. That's a final plat. Do anybody on the commission want to hear that one? Anybody in the audience wish to hear that? Okay. We'll take that by consent. Item 2-2 is 2018-4. It's a one-step final plat, Wildcat Kellogg edition. Anybody on the commission wish to hear it? Seeing none. Anybody in the audience wish to hear that? Okay. Might just explain that these both received 6-0 approval from the subdivision committee, and that's why we do it this way. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Then we have a vacation item, 3-1, 2018 quadruple 02, city vacation of a platted access controls for the purpose of reconfiguring access on the Bonnie Bray 3rd edition plat. Anybody in the commission wish to hear that one? Anybody in the audience wish to hear it? Okay. we have a motion?
So moved.
Mike Green and Mr. Clausmeyer seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Okay, public hearings. Case number 2017-00042, a conditional use auto sales in limited commercial zoning. And I believe we have to hear that one, or not? Yeah. Okay. Okay, item number 5, city conditional use on 218, number 1. Anyone in the commission wish to hear that? Anyone in the audience wish to hear that case? No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a city conditional use.
Mr. Chairman, you might read what that's for. I don't think the numbers mean anything to people in the audience.
Okay. It's a conditional use for a 100-foot wireless communication facility on property zone SF5, single-family residential. Anybody want to hear that? Item 5? Okay, we can take that by consent. Case number 2018 quadruple 02, county conditional use for Verizon 150-foot communication tower on property zone RR, rural residential. Anyone in the commission wish to hear that one? Anyone in the audience wish to hear that case? We'll hear that case. Number 7, case number 2018-3, city conditional use to allow a daycare general for a maximum of 77 children on property zone SF5, single family. Anybody on the commission wish to hear that case? Anyone in the audience wish to hear it? Seeing none, we'll take that by consent. Case number CUP 2018, number 1. And I think that's what you said you wanted to hear? Okay, all right. Anybody in the council wish to hear that one? Yeah, we'll hear it. Number 9, case number PUD 2018 quadruple 01. So we'll hear that. Okay. Number 10, it's a zoning issue 2018 quadruple 01, a city zone change from SF5 single family residential to TF3 two-family residential. Anyone on the council wish to hear that on the commission? Anyone in the audience wish to hear that? We'll hear that one too. All right. Let's have a motion on,
Let's do case number 5, 7.
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Warren made the motion, Cindy Miles seconded it. Okay, so we'll go back to case number 4. Kyle?
Good afternoon, Kyle Kobe, Associate Planner. This is a conditional use 2017-42. This is a case that was heard 2 weeks ago at Planning Commission. It was deferred so that the commission would have the ability to review building elevations and site plan that was to be submitted by the applicant. In addition to that, this case was also heard by the District Advisory Board last week. And the District Advisory Board did vote in favor of it, 6-1, with one member abstaining. A lot of the issues that were raised during that meeting were along the same lines as what was raised during the Planning Commission. The notes from the meeting are part of the attachments in your staff report. So really what we're here for today is to allow the commission to discuss the the new submittals from the applicant who is here today, pertaining to the elevations and the site plan, which should be a part of your attachments and are also visible on the screen. I know the applicant is here. Other than that, I guess I'm willing to take questions.
Questions for the presenter?
Yes. On number 6 of what is, on the regulations about enclosed building, doing stuff in there. Now, does this include, like, if they need to change a tire or the wipers or the lights or the battery or something like that? Is that kind of stuff okay to do outside of the building?
I believe that all repairs and maintenance would need to take place inside of the building, without additional approval. Dale, you might be able to help me out more with that in terms of if outdoor maintenance is also permitted. Indoor would be fine, to my understanding, but I can't speak to outdoor.
Yeah, you're not working.
Try this one.
Well, unless it specifically, the wording specifically exempts those things, if it says that everything has to be done indoors, then the enforcement guys would read it that way.
Okay. It's just clarification for me. I
Okay.
didn't have any particular opinion.
Any other questions for staff? Yes.
Just to be clear, the fence that is along the backside, meaning the east side, will be required to stay there and be maintained. Is that right?
Yes, we would require screening because there's residential on that side. There is currently a fence there. That was one of the things that we had noted about the previous site plan, is that just wasn't noted on the site plan, but it is now accounted for. My understanding is that will be the same fence that will remain on site.
All right, thank you.
Other questions for staff? Seeing none, agent or applicant?
Hamid Bakhtiari, 1332 Woodrow, Wichita, Kansas, 67203. I am the owner, the agent architect. Had an emergency today, so I'll be representing this case and any questions you guys might have. I just want to start to address the question you had, sir, about the maintenance. And in the plans that we've already got approved, we do have a bay for maintenance of the vehicles. So we're aware that all that maintenance needs to be done inside, and would express that to whoever's renting the property as well, just to be in accordance with all local regulations. Do we have any more questions?
No questions. Anything
Okay.
else you'd like to add?
I think I just want to add that we, at the DAB meeting, we did meet with the neighborhood association and did come up with a plan to work with them to make this an idea that is going to work in that neighborhood, and something that they'll be able to build on with the butterfly garden that we added. If you can see, let me see if I can. We're going to do a butterfly way station in this area. So yeah, we do want to work hand in hand with the neighborhood and make sure this is something that is going to be pleasing to everybody. Thank you.
Anybody from the audience that'd like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Warren, seconded by Mr. Green. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
You're opposed? Okay, 10 to 1. It passes. Okay, item number 6. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave Earott with planning staff. This is conditional use number 2018-02. This is the request from Verizon for a 150-foot communication tower east of 127th Street, north of 63rd Street. I'm sure the commission will recall consideration of this request last fall, but we are talking a different location. If essentially, the difference between what was heard last fall and this case is that the new location proposed is 700 feet east of 127th Street, where last year we were talking only about 150, 200 feet, 250 feet, something like that. The aerial shows the new location outlined here. It was closer to the 127th Street approximately at that location last year. You can see this in relationship to all the other interests. And I would note, for the sake of discussion, Cook Airfield is to the south and east of the location. We provided you copies of site plans that were submitted with the location. These are the maps that show where this site sits in relationship to 127th Street. It's supposed to be 700 feet east. We're still only about 150 feet or so from the north property line. A copy of an aerial photo with the site location provided by the applicant, and I'm sure they will go through this when they make their presentation, a little more detailed with regard to what is actually proposed, a blow up of the internal compound where the tower will be, the 150-foot monopole, the equipment building, the other improvements that we've done inside the compound. And this is a drawing showing the 6-foot privacy fence that will be constructed surrounding the compound where it will sit. Aerial photos. The reality is this is looking at the property that sits to the north of the site. The tower will be roughly in this location. I'm looking now east from 127th Street. This is the drive entrance that will be used. You can see the hedgerow that is on the property line to the north, and the tower would be located further back to the east, kind of over the little crest of the hill. This is looking north along 127th Street. The entrance to the site is just to the bottom. This is the edge of the hedgerow that is shared with the property line to the north. This is looking west from the entrance towards the properties that are west on the west side of 127th Street. This is a shot looking south along 127th. 63rd Street is way down here in the background. You can see the houses that are on the south side of 63rd Street. This is another shot on 127th. I'm looking east, kind of northeast, and the tower location would be roughly in this area. So I think the staff report provides you all the information regarding what we're talking about here. This is a resubmittal of the original application, primarily because the application last fall was very site-specific with the legal attached and advertised of the lease area, which is the case here as well. They are proposing the lease area as shown on the data that is provided, and it would be the area that would be zoned would be the square where the tower would be located. So I'll be happy to answer any questions and providing information regarding why we're here. I know Mr. Wagner is here to help with any issues that might come up about the whole protocols of what are going on. And Mr. Holland, on behalf of Verizon, is also here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave, just to refresh my memory and kind of keep me straight on procedure, we did approve the application when it was here before and the
Yes.
old location.
The planning commission recommended approval. It went to the county commission. The county commission sent it back. And after reconsideration, it went back again from the planning commission to the county commissioners with a resubmittal of the original recommendation, which was to approve the original site and also to waive the compatibility height standard issues that were in play. Before the county commissioners took final action on that request, the applicant requested that that request be held in abeyance or just be held, and this new location further to the east be submitted. Primarily because all the property owners surrounding, and I didn't put the map in, but all the property owners on the west side of 127th and north that were notified about that request filed protest petitions. So part of the requirement or the intent with this new location, and I think Mr. Holland can address that, was to try to move the site further to the east with the hope that that would alleviate neighbor concerns and that this case might go forward without protest. We don't know that will happen, but that's what's going on right now.
Any other questions? Mr. Richardson?
Dave, just to kind of summarize here, if the tower were moved another couple of 100 feet to the south, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It would meet all the criteria. Is that right? I mean, the only reason we're here is because it doesn't meet the setback to the north residence. We've solved the
Well,
problem.
that's not 100% true. It takes a conditional use permit for the tower to be approved. We would not be asking for the waiver of the compatibility standards regarding the setback from the property line to the north.
Right.
The concerns about the setbacks off 127th are alleviated by moving the property to the east.
Okay.
But, and I think you'll hear from Mr. Holland that the change from the original location roughly at this point further east took a long negotiation with the landowner to agree with that. And so there's, you got other landowner issues involved here to get to this point as well. Yours is right there, just red box.
Yeah, where's the side button? I can't even see. Oh, there it is. There it is.
Just click on that.
Thank you. All right.
Please state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Curtis Holland. I'm an attorney with the Polson Law Firm, address 6201 College Boulevard, Suite 500, Overland Park, Kansas. Here on behalf of Verizon Wireless, the applicant for the communication tower structure, in support of this conditional use permit application. I've been before this board a couple of times already on this case, so I think you all have some familiarity with the proposal in terms of the facility and what we were trying to accomplish in terms of improving wireless service in this area for Verizon Wireless customers. And so I won't go a lot into detail about that. I do want to maybe just take you back a second on the history. This is a second application, a new application and separate application from the first application. Excuse me. As staff indicated in the report, we were here once before, went to the Board of County Commissioners. It was remanded. You considered it again in December. At that meeting, on the day of that meeting, some of the residents to the west, I believe Mr. Van Dyke, one of the neighbors to the west of the property, submitted some information to this board indicating that our landlord, our property owner, would be willing to reconsider a new location on the property. And we, Verizon, indicated that we would be willing to work with the residents on the new location, subject to meeting with our landlord and trying to work out a proposed location that they would agree to. But we were willing to, in good faith, roll up our sleeves, go talk to our landlord, visit with the residents about what would be permitted. And so that's kind of what did take place, and and this is the result. This new application is the result of those discussions. I don't know that everybody's entirely happy with where we are right now, but I'll give you sort of where we are and how we ended up being here. So again, after our meeting in December, as staff indicated, we did table that other application, the original application, and that is now just sitting there. It's waiting to be heard by the Board of County Commissioners, and our intention is to go to the Board of County Commissioners with both applications, if you will. Hopefully, we would get a recommendation on this one and move that to the Board of County Commissioners as well. And assuming we get a recommendation and that one is approved, we'll withdraw the other application, the original application, so they wouldn't have to take an action on it. But we are holding it in advance to allow them the opportunity to decide which location they prefer. But back on this particular case, again, when we were back here in December, the residents submitted some information, and I don't know that's part of this record, so I'm going to go ahead and ask that it be offered into the record, and I'll hand it to you in a little bit. But this is a letter, or some correspondence rather, from I believe Mr. Van Dyke, indicating that they'd had some communications with our landlord about a possible location for the facility. And so I want to put up on the screen some of the relevant part of that information that was provided to you the last time, and I'll turn this into you. But at the back of that document, there was a sketch, if you will, showing the various locations of where they would like to have the facility moved to. Again, if you remember, the issue was, let's move it as far to the east off of the road as we can, move it as far away as we can. Originally, our landlord didn't want to do that, but after that meeting in December, they did agree to reconsider that position. And so they did allow us to move the facility to the present location that's represented in the site plan and in the application that's before you tonight. But just to show you the area that we're talking about where it's being located, and this, it's hard to tell, but this line up here, if you will, let's call that the road. And this line here, we're heading east away from the road, and then we're putting the tower somewhere in this area. Am I backwards? Well, okay. Well, in any event, let's just say this. The little octagon here is the location for where the proposed facility, where the neighbors, I think, the residents wanted it to be located. And if you can read on the box here, I don't know if it's, I guess it's legible. It says approximate location proposed by neighbors and airport approximately 700 feet to 800 feet from the property owner's west property line. And that's exactly really what we did. We moved it 700 feet. We didn't get to the full 800 feet, and I think that's what the issue is still here with some of the residents. They'd prefer it to still be 800 feet. But again, the octagon box and the text box here said that they would be willing to approve or consider it okay if it was 700 to 800 feet. We moved it 700 feet. That's all the distance that our landlord would allow us to move it. And so there it is. I do want to just represent to you where the old location was on the property, which is this location, and then where we moved it to, which was back here, 700 feet. So we're 700 feet off the road. We meet the compatibility standard, height standard, from the setback from this side, from the road side. Where we don't meet it again is from the north property line. The last time we were here, we were only 145 feet from the north property line. We did end up moving it the full height of the tower, which is 150, and I think it's closer to 152 feet, which is something I think historically has been approved and granted by the county. So we're 700 feet east of the road and 152 feet south of that north property line. That's the new location. I did have some distances just to show you, because we've had discussions about how far this would be away from the other property owners, and you can see that by moving it 700 feet, we did move it quite a bit of distance away further from the property owners along the west, and even to Mr. McPhail's house, which is right here, or the McPhail property right here. That home is their home right there. So that's the sort of the distance, if you can tell. And it's a measurement to their front door, if you will, because that's what people are going to look at and see. So that's the distance. This is the old location, and you can see the numbers there, but I've got a chart that showed kind of what happened. We got the column stating the old location, one stating the new location, and then the difference. And you can see the differences between where the tower is relative to the neighbors' properties now. And in all cases, we did move the tower further away, and you can see in the right-hand column, those are all additional distances from where the tower is now relative to their homes. So that helps give you an idea of what that, what we did to try to meet their concerns, and I know that they feel maybe we came up a little bit short because they'd like it to be the full 800 feet. We are at 700 feet. We do think that's a considerable distance, a considerable compromise, and it's the distance that our landlord, our property owner would allow. They wouldn't allow us to go any further to the east than this location. So that's how we ended up where we are today. Again, it was an effort to try to meet their concerns, and we hopefully we did. At least you'll recognize the effort on our part that we tried to. And I know that you recommended approval of the last facility. The last time we were here, we're asking for your recommendation for approval again with this one. We have moved it a considerable distance, and so we would hope you'd find favor with that. And then just real briefly, and I'm not sure I'll get another chance to come back up here, but if I can, I would like to, if the residents have something and I could address that. But I do want to talk about the stipulations, if you don't mind. We're in general agreement with all the stipulations, but I wanted to talk about stipulation B, if you can look at that real quick. Stipulation B essentially says that we need to get all of our permits and build the facility within 1 year from the approval of the conditional use permit. I know historically that's been a stipulation on communication towers. We're generally not opposed to it, but I think just to state this, 1 year is a real short trigger. And that means to get all of your permits and then to build a facility and to build any facility in 1 year is a pretty short trigger. So I think the 1 year, if we could, I'd like to lengthen that, and I would ask for your indulgence to have that be changed to 2 years, if possible, and really make it 2 years from the date the building permit is issued. So if you would consider that. The other issue or reason or concern I have with that is that in the event, and this happened, this is just something that happened in a different jurisdiction, not yours, but there was some similar language like this in another case I had in a different jurisdiction, and what happened afterwards is there was a lawsuit filed. Lawsuit filed in that case by the residents, appealing the decision by the board there, and the stipulation was worded like this, and it didn't have an accommodation in the event there was a lawsuit or an appeal filed. So if we're going to have a time limit, which generally I'm not in favor of, but if we're going to agree to a time limit, we'd like there at least to be some recognition that it would be told, if you will, if there's an appeal that's filed on the case. And in any event, we'd like 2 years from the date the building permit is issued. With that, I would close and stand for any questions. Thank you.
Make a statement and a couple of questions, see if they're in line. The original location that was approved the last time we met on this, that location was mainly favored by the owner of the land and opposed by the majority of the landowners around the property. Does your company, do you have a preference, aside from protest and all the other things? Does one site favor the other for you, or is it really inconsequential to you where it's located, either closer to the 127th or the 700-foot back?
Well, I would say that our preference would be the one that's closer to the road. And the main reason is probably the construction costs increase. The further east you move away from the road, that means longer lines for utility runs, longer costs, or costs that are more costs due to the road construction and so forth. So it's probably more just because of the excess construction costs.
My next question would be, is the owner is willing to compromise to help out the neighbors, but his preference would be also, his preference would be closer to 127th Street if all things were?
I think originally they were, their decision-making, as far as I know, because I didn't talk to them directly, but we've had our folks have talked to them, and I know the residents have talked to them, was that they wanted to put it on their property in a location that would be sort of out of the way so that their property could be developed in the future. They didn't want the pole in the middle of the property, which, as I remember telling you last time, under your compatibility standards, it forces that pole to be in the middle of properties, and so you have a, it really makes it difficult to find a landowner willing to lease their land. but I think they wanted to move it out of the way, and that's why they chose that first location. I think that was their thinking as they moved this thing forward too, is they still want to make sure that they can develop the rest of their land, but they were trying to accommodate the residents by agreeing to move it to the east. And I think standing here today, I'm not sure they have a preference. They would be willing to do either of these locations.
Any other questions for the applicant? Hartman?
Why does the owner object to the 800 feet?
Again, I think it's just this, they think that the further you keep moving it, the more it impacts their development, and I think 700 foot was sort of the limit, you know. I can't necessarily speak for them, but that's what they've told us. So, and I've got confirmation on that from them.
Questions?
I'd like to ask staff about that number B. Is there something in the regulations that allows you as staff to extend the, that 1 year to after it reaches that point and it's a necessity?
Well, given the attention that's paid, I think staff would be more comfortable if you want to waive that, the 1 year and say within 2 years of the issuance of a final building permit or all applicable permits or something to that effect and increase it to 2 years. We just, from an administrative standpoint, we'd like to know that stuff is actually going to be completed instead of just hanging out there for.
Okay, thank you.
And just if I might, if that's the way it gets worded and recommended, we would be okay with that if there's some acknowledgement that if there's an appeal filed, that would certainly toll that deadline, because we're probably not going to, I mean, I don't know what we would do, but litigation can have an impact on construction.
Questions? And you will have a rebuttal time after that.
Thank you, sir. And then I would like to turn in both the letter that Mr. Van Dyke entered the last time in December. I'd like to enter that for the record today, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint that I showed.
I have one more question, Mr. Green.
I would assume that you would like to have or letter B be applied to your prior request also? Not only this one, but the one before?
I don't think that's before you, but I think that
I
would
don't
be,
think we can do
it would be
that.
better, but yeah, I don't know that that's in front of you. Yeah, I guess I apologize, I didn't pick up on that on the earlier one, but I certainly think that it's better this way.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, sir. Who in the audience would like to speak on this case? Andrew.
Hello, I'm Stan McPhail. I'm at 6140 South, 127th Street East. I'm the property owner directly north of this proposed site. We have several concerns, but we're not going to address them at this time. The one question I would like to ask is, based on this 700-foot distance, has Mr. Holland, have you looked into the cell phone tower, the internet tower that's located in Rose Hill? We are on Pixius internet, and we've discussed it 2 or 3 times with them about would this tower interfere with our reception and being able to get internet. And they've told us on both occasions that they could not say one way or the other. Right now, it would depend exactly where the tower was, the frequencies used, and that kind of thing. And it potentially may not even be decided until a tower goes up, that it could knock down our ability to get internet at our home. And we haven't been able to get an answer from Pixius precisely on that, so at this time, that's one of the questions I would have to be addressed, or other concerns we can hold off on.
Yes, Commission members, I do want to point out, and I know I'd mentioned the statute during when this item was up before, but KSA 66-2019 specifically prohibits governing bodies, or essentially planning commissions, from considering reception and whether there already is there are frequencies that may be used, or whether there are already towers in place and things along those lines as factors for denying, approving an application.
Stop his time? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, is that information that we can gather from Mr. Holland before this proceeds further, before we know what our objectives are going to be on this?
I mean, you could certainly speak with Mr. Holland outside of this hearing. I'm just saying, I was just citing a statute
Okay,
that applies
I
to the
understand
governing
that.
body.
Okay. Anything else? Pardon me?
Anything else you want to say?
Not at this time, no.
Hey, we have questions for you.
As I understand, Pixius is line of sight, is it not?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And they can't tell you whether or not this tower would interfere with that?
We've asked them on 2 or 3 occasions, and the only answer we've gotten from them is, we can't tell you for sure, we don't know. It depends on what frequencies are being run and the precise location of the tower. And they said there's a potential that could take out our internet completely. They don't know for sure right now. That's part of the reason when we were looking at 800 feet or so, that we knew that that would move it far enough east that we wouldn't have that concern at all. So we don't have a clear-cut answer on that issue.
And the last time that you spoke before us, they indicated that if it was going to be this close to your property line, because you're to the north, your property's to the north of this.
Yes, sir.
Of this site, that if it was going to remain essentially that close to the property line, your preference was closer to the 127th.
No.
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 This would be a
No, that's why when we had a discussion and we thought we had an agreement with Verizon after the 12/7 meeting, because we were told that Verizon would be willing to move it anywhere we wanted, and we had an okay from the landowner of 800 feet. And that's why it surprised us that we came back at 7, because we knew the 800 feet would be plenty far enough for us. It would clear the internet problem and all of that. So now we're questioning it when it's 700.
2 locations, though, of the 2 locations, whether this one or the one that's closer, you would prefer this one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just wanted to-
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Anything else?
Questions? Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else? Seeing none? Would you like a rebuttal time of 2 minutes? Or 3 minutes? 2 minutes. That's what I thought.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments. I don't know the answer exactly to your question. I will find out and give you an answer. I think I mean, my general knowledge of it, and I'm not a techie, I'm a lawyer, is that we're licensed for a specific bandwidth, and that I do know this much under FCC rules. We are prohibited from causing interference of the kind that you're talking about, and that needs to be addressed if there is an issue. And in fact, we would be in trouble if we don't address it. And it would be, the FCC can cause us a lot of pain if we don't. So I would say, but as to your question, I will find out if it would cause any negative impact to you or potential negative impact to you, whether that be at 700 feet or at 800 feet, if it makes a difference between those 2 distances. I think that was your question, if I understood it. And I don't know the answer sitting here, but I will certainly endeavor to get an answer for you guys and then get it to you. And I know just on the one point, that our landowner, I wanted to clarify this, our landowner agreed to consider moving it to 700 to 800 feet. I think the correspondence indicated they would be in agreement with moving it to the octagon shape that you had put on that map and where that was, and I won't put it back up, but it was a 700 to 800 foot, and I did promise you that I would work with our landowner afterwards to try to move it as far as I could. We're subject to what they decide, and they decided in this instance, for whatever reason, 700 feet was the limit that they would go to. So we did, I think we did live up to what we said we would do for you or with you, and I'm sorry that if that's not totally acceptable to you. If it's the issue regarding the interference, I will get an answer for you on that. But I do think that it was quite a move for us to do that, and anyway, thank you.
2 questions, one for you, sir. Just to be clear, the Cook Field, airfield has signed off on this, or I know their concern was a tower encroaching on their flight pattern. They didn't speak here today, so I'm assuming that they're okay with this, but can you speak to that?
So I'm told, it's been represented that they're okay with it. We haven't spoken directly to them, but I think the residents had maybe have talked to them, or maybe they've talked to the staff, but my understanding is they're okay with this. They originally didn't, if you'll remember, they liked the original location closer to 127th Street because the further east you go, they think it starts to impact their flight approach and landing approaches.
Purpose of my question.
And so, but they haven't weighed in directly to me, but I understand they're okay with this. At least I hope they're okay with it. And they would probably be here if they weren't.
The other question I've got, and I'm not sure how to ask this because they're not at the podium, but there were protests at the old location. My understanding is protests were filed.
That's correct.
That's correct. The question that I would have is that since this is not to the full 800 foot, do they intend to file a protest
Mr.
if
Warren,
we were to approve?
is this a question for,
This is a question for for anybody in the audience that's interested in this. I don't know if I can ask that question.
can you come back up?
While he's doing that, this is a new application, so they would have 14 days from today to file protests, and so the protest could be completely different than the previous case.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll bring it back to the commission. What's the will of the,
For approval.
Second.
any changes in the recommendation about
On
the
letter B,
length of time?
Well, the letter B, didn't we, that's all right, the time element, yes. And trying to think.
Were you thinking 2 years from the
What,
time it's
what Dale
permitted?
said earlier, that 2 years from the time of the issuance of the building permit.
Applicable permits, yeah.
Mhm.
2 years from the applicable permits being
Yeah, but
approved.
the building permit's what kicks the time element.
And with the motion, there was also a question brought up about if there were litigation. I believe the applicant brought that up as well in terms of that potentially tolling the time frame. That's up to you as the motion maker.
Litigation comes up, there's not gonna be any building permit issued. I mean, that's my opinion.
Chime in, my understanding would be we would give 2 years and we would accommodate the issue that in the event a lawsuit was filed, it would be automatic, and we'll wordsmith that by the time it gets to county commissioners.
Okay with it?
I'd second that.
No, we have a second.
I'm okay
Oh,
with
you already
that.
did it?
I beat you to it.
Okay,
Just so it
moved,
got
Ms.
done.
Miles, seconded. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So what's that, 10-1? Next item.
Okay. Next case is CUP 2018-01. Dave, you're out and staff. This is an amendment to DP 323. The moorings CUP were roughly on the west side of Meridian, north of K96. The area under consideration is outlined in blue. A portion of the property is zoned LC, and then another neck of it is zoned office warehouse. And the far west side does abut the Arkansas River. What is to the immediate west of this little neck is land that's owned by the church, and is their ball fields and some other things. You'll see that on some of the information that we provide. This is the outline of the property. For those that are familiar, this is the fire station that's on 42nd Street, right to the west of Meridian. There's also a new, what is it? It's a financial, Ameritrust? Yeah, credit union facility right at that intersection. You can see this is the comprehensive plan. It's an area identified primarily as new residential growth. This is the drawing of the original CUP that is of record that we are amending. And the area that we're dealing with is down in this location. And you'll see from the new drawings that there's a significant change because this is what it will look like now. Now, this is the latest one on file, and the area under consideration, I'll show you on the next slide, is actually taking land off of these two parcels as well as this entire land on the west side, and that's what that will look like. You're seeing the little cul-de-sac disappears, and there's some other things that happen as a result of this application. And there's a plat going through with respect to this action now. The substance of this request is essentially to amend the CUP with respect to what's now parcel 9, and as reconfigured in this CUP, and primary use is to be for a self-storage complex. And it was provided a copy of a site plan kind of anticipating how this land area might be developed for self-storage. A number of reasons as to why that might make more sense, and that's as a request, because with the river right on the west side, other development gets challenging, and self-storage does not generate the need for all the other water and sewer extensions. And so this becomes something that is attractive for this development. This is a picture that's looking, I am on Cobblestone Street, looking west, actually across the land that is the ball fields and the soccer fields that is owned and used by the church. And further to the west behind all this, you see the tree line, and right over the horizon there is the river. This is looking north along Cobblestone. The entrance to this site will be roughly at this intersection, and there will have to be some clearing and other work happen in the property on further north to develop the land. That's roughly the same area. This is the intersection of 42nd and Cobblestone. You can see the fire station in the background. Just off the right-hand side is the church. So that's the general location and the substance of what was going on here. Staff has recommended approval with appropriate language within the CUP to address the development, and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dave. Had I seen the second or the first drawing of the community unit plan, we probably would have been hearing this because it was not in our packet. And I assume that's a concept drawing, does not match the plat that's there today with those two cul-de-sacs. And that's part of why I wanted, can you put that back up?
This?
No, the one before, that one there. So that's all we had in our packet. I wondered, that does not represent the plat as it is today, right? That's a concept drawing of those two cul-de-sacs. Well, maybe this isn't working. That is a concept drawing, not a copy of the plat. Is that right? Okay.
So this drawing reflects the CUP, and it's not the plat. And the agent's here that can address that in more detail. Yeah.
Well, essentially, that's a concept drawing, and they're going to redo the north piece of that that's in crosshatched.
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with that property to the north, further to the north, and I'll let the applicant address all that.
We could just have him quickly tell us what's going on. That'd be helpful.
But that's not a part of this application, as I understand it. Yeah.
I may be able to shed some light on this. Russ Avey, Boffman Company, agent for the applicant. What you're seeing before you is the CUP in its entirety. When we amended what Dave had showed you previous to this drawing in 2009, 2010, we elected, I don't want to go to the old drawing because it's really a moot point at this juncture. So in 2008, 2010 timeframe, we had worked with the developers on replatting and reorganizing the CUP into this configuration. The Planning Commission approved a preliminary plat on the entirety of this tract that shows kind of an anchor-shaped cul-de-sac system coming off. We elected at the time, the platting requirements were altered to simply final plat this front, most shovel-ready portion of the CUP, since we did have some commercial development interest at the time. And then we elected to kind of put this back half of the CUP on hold for the near term. As it turns out, we've had considerable interest in this self-storage units. As you know, the Bachmans have done the Harbor Isle and the Moorings development. There's over 500 homes in the area, all of which would be, quite frankly, interested in some sort of alternative storage, off-site storage use for the Meridian corridor. So we took this overall concept, we final plat the front half, and now we are simply eating this portion of the site, final platting it. The plat has been approved by the Planning Commission here recently. So what you're seeing here as parcel 9 is reflective of what the plat that has been approved illustrates as well. Ultimately, this northwest quadrant will be final platted in some configuration in the future.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience like to speak on this case? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission.
Move to approve for staff comments.
Second?
Got a motion by Mr. Bill Johnson and a second by Mr. Hartman. And do we have any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. It's 11-0. David, you're up again.
Yes, sir. This is case PUD 2018-01, request from Mr. Masters for a rezoning from SF5 to PUD for a limited equipment sales and service area on property at 1522 East 47th Street. The parcel in question is located here on the north side of 47th Street. We are west of Seneca, but this is an aerial showing the property. This aerial is taken from current GIS, and I think there's other improvements that have occurred since the aerial was taken. I don't know for sure exactly how old the aerial is, but it's not necessarily quote-unquote current. The property in question is located on the edge of a new residential area in the comprehensive plan. This is a copy of the PUD drawing. I know some of you got hard copies in the packet, and we'll address that with Mr. Richardson and others. I think we'll probably be providing hard copies and mail-outs to everybody from now on. But the actual drawing for the PUD shows the house, the buildings, as well as some other existing buildings in the back, and the language with respect to restrictions on what is would be applicable to the PUD. The staff report outlines background and a general finding based on what we know going into the hearing. And well, let me go through the aerials or pictures. This is looking north across 47th Street at kind of the east side of the property. You can see some of the vehicles parked out here, as well as one of the buildings. This is looking south across 47th Street. No, this is the neighbor to the west, I'm sorry. The neighbor to the west with his large building. This is looking east along 47th Street. The edge of the applicant's property is here, and you can see further improvements with the old house that's east of his location. And that property is looking west along 47th Street. Kind of a blow-up of what he's got for a sign up in front of his, the house, and then that first building that is a building on the east side of the house. This one is actually taken from the street to the north of dead end, and you're looking south towards the property in question. This is a large building that's on the back side of the applicant's property, and it's his house is sitting at this location. The staff report's recommendation is for denial, as outlined in the staff report. The conclusion we drew was that the intensity of this operation as exists on 47th Street at that location was incompatible with the single-family uses in that immediate area. However, as noted in the staff report, if the Planning Commission is inclined to recommend approval, we have a number of conditions that we are recommending. It's my understanding that the language on the CUP drawing as amended does reflect the language that was outlined in the staff report as a recommendation going forward. So with that, we'll close the presentation and ask other questions of the Planning Commission, and I know we have folks here to address this.
Is in the city limits of Wichita, isn't it?
Yes.
And how long has this property been owned by the applicant?
According to the applicant, he's owned it for 20 years. And as I noted in the staff report, part of the reason that we're at this juncture is that previous business activity occurring on the property reached the point that he was in violation of the code requirements for conducting business that was beyond what would otherwise be allowed as a home occupation. There were citations and issues before the codes court, and as part of the rectification of those issues, the options were essentially, which is true in every case, when you are not in compliance, you either cease what's going on or you seek an amendment to the zoning of your property to accommodate what's happening, and that's why we're here today.
I own property in this vicinity, so I don't feel like I can make a proper judgment, so I think I'm gonna step down. I have a conflict of interest.
He's withdrawing.
Withdrawing. I own property in the area, and so I feel like that I should withdraw.
Also, I would like to say that I did receive a phone call concerning this on Friday, and I told the person that I haven't even got my material yet, so I couldn't make a decision until I read it over and it was presented here. So I will be making a decision at what's here today.
I also had a call, and I simply told the person that called that, thank you for calling, but I don't want to discuss the case.
We all probably got a call.
Two.
Okay. Any other questions for the staff?
For what it's worth, staff got lots of calls on both sides of the equation, so.
Yeah, but you have to take them.
I guess I've got a staff question on the being cited for violations of zoning regulations. How long ago or how often have these, has this property been cited?
The case, first contact, according to the information that was provided by neighborhood housing or the neighborhood group in MAPC, indicated it was, some of it went back at least a year ago and maybe a little longer in terms of the initial contacts. There were follow-ups, and then it resulted in a case being filed with the codes court.
So that has not been adjudicated yet?
It has, as I understand, the initial action was the applicant failed to appear, which results in a different action by the court. And by the time he got back in front of the judge application had been made here, and it's my understanding the codes court is essentially holding this in abeyance until the zoning process is handled.
I assume that no one will use that information to make a decision. I've been told that. Mr. Hart?
Yes, Dave, do we have a list of what the code violations were?
I did not get details on that. It was primarily the conduct of the business, and I understand it was not only just the mowing contractor, but there was also more repair and outdoor storage of the mowers and some other activity, some signage issues that were cited, and I think the applicant can tell you that some of that stuff was mitigated in the intervening time between when they first were cited and today.
Mentioned the number of way that he had too many employees to be a home occupation. Do you know how many employees?
I don't know that it was a number of employees. I just think the overall intensity was beyond what would qualify as a home occupation.
Any other questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Warren.
On our provisions, should we approve this, there's a provision on here that says that paved parking spaces were provided in accordance with the requirements of the Unified Zoning Code. Do you know how many parking spaces that would be in this situation?
Don't know that I've quantified a number. No, not off the top of my
Approximation.
head. But it's a requirement that the off-street parking that would have to be provided, which would be a function with code department to figure out what that would be, it would have to be paved, meet the standards. I don't have a quantification of numbers, no.
Thank you.
Do you know how many parking spaces at this point in time he
That he
has?
In terms of marked spaces, no, but as you can see, we've got 4 to 5 right now parked in front of the area, which does go beyond the width of the drive entrance coming off of 47th Street. So, and parking spaces per code also counts those that are inside buildings. So, we haven't got to the point where we can number that stuff.
Dave, you have marked on there's a place on the CUP that calls for the equipment display area in the front yard.
Mm-hmm.
What zoning classification would this have to allow outdoor equipment display?
Right, LC with a conditional use.
So by right, it'd have to be GC in order to allow that.
Well,
Just to
and
be clear.
the reason this is a PUD is because they'd have to rezone GC, which would be even a more harsh issue.
I
That's
understand.
why we recommended going forward with the PUD, because it gives us the ability to not open up the laundry list in the general commercial district of other uses that could occur.
I understand.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll have the agent or applicant has 10 minutes for presentation.
You need to speak in the microphone, so.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Steve Masters. I'm the owner of 1522 West 47th Street South. Masters Mowers is the business that I've established there. If at the discretion, I can answer the questions that Mr. Yearout didn't know the answer to. I can answer those now if you'd prefer, or should I do my presentation and...
Do your presentation first.
Okay. I can answer the questions that folks were asking to Mr. Yearout. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody. I know we've sent out a copious amount of contact by email and phone, and I said thank you for your patience, and I said being here and listening to our application. Dave is the one actually that helped me initiate this process. I was ignorant coming in at all this works, and Dave helped me walk through the process and set me up with Mr. Boffman, our architect, and the staff's been really helpful here. Short version, give a little background on myself. I was born here in Wichita. I'm sorry? Oh. Right. Okay, I'm not, I don't know what the clicker is. Pardon? I don't know where do I have the clicker here, or? I don't. Ah, okay, I'm like, I don't see a mouse. Okay, all right, I'll get to that. I said I was born here in Wichita, St. Joseph Hospital in 1969. I attended school right up the street from my home at Enterprise Elementary on Seneca Street. I'm a graduate from Wichita State University. I have an undergraduate degree in general science, sociology and psychology, and an advanced degree in sociology. I'm a graduate of Wichita State's entrepreneurship certificate program. I'm a graduate of Guiding Light Pastoral Seminary school. I pastor a church in South Wichita as well. I purchased this property in, if memory serves, 1999, and we began operating as a business immediately therein. When I purchased the property, it was one of the reasons I bought it is because it had arterial frontage on 47th Street South, and it was listed as an unplatted area. And to be fair, it's my naivete, but I assumed that meant that it wasn't zoned residential. So my assumption at the time was that it qualified for my business operation. So I've been operating my business from that location ever since. We've grown as a function of the time that we've been there. I've always strived to be a good neighbor to the people in and around my home, business, and neighborhood. I served 2 terms as president of the Homeowners Association of the Mead neighborhood by Pawnee and Grove Street, and a single term as the vice president there. So I'm used to hearing folks who aren't happy with different developments in a neighborhood, and I like to believe that I'm good at being proactive and trying to endeavor to mediate and mitigate those difficulties. To that end, there's nobody here speaking for or against this cause that I haven't spoken with personally, gone to and said, hey, if you're for us, great, tell us why. If you're against us, please let us know what we can do better and do differently to win your favor or to minimize the effects that our business has on your life and livelihood. I believe ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, that everything is about balance, and you're trying to balance my needs and my rights as a homeowner and a business owner against the rights of the folks that don't want us to operate. And in my assessment, those things come down to impact. If you close the business that I've had for 19, 20 years, it has a sincere and immediate impact on me, my family, my clientele, and the businesses that I patronize. It's huge. If you allow this, there is an impact, to be sure and to be fair, on my neighbors and those in and around my neighborhood. My argument is that the impact on everyone else, cumulative, is far lesser than the impact on me if you vote to the negative. To me, impact can be boiled down to 4 facets. There's sound, sight, valuation, and traffic. We have never been cited for excessive noise in the area. We've never had a noise complaint issued by the police department, nor have we had a noise complaint generated that's gone through zoning. We've never been ticketed in any way for a parking violation, a traffic violation. No one has ever been arrested in course with actions on or because of my property. There have never been a traffic accident involving any of my customers in nearly 20 years' time. So I believe that the traffic aspect, likewise, the traffic count on 47th Street, which is my home, abuts 47th Street, where my address is on 47th. The traffic count per Sedgwick County data is 10,000 cars a day. I will warrant that we don't have love to have that many customers, but we don't. The impact on traffic of the customer flow from my location is negligible. It's a drop in the bucket relative to the traffic flow that's available on 47th Street South. So that's that's sound and traffic. As far as sight goes, I've got pictures I'll bring up of our residence. Our residence is clean. It looks like a home. It's well maintained. We have attractive landscape. We keep our lawn in impeccable condition. My home has never been cited for any code or zoning violations relative to its upkeep and appearance. Our property values have risen as a function of time. We have 6-foot privacy screening encasing the home on all available sides. And my neighbor to the west has, bring that up, has giant arborvitae trees further screening him from our location. We have 1 acre approximately, it's give or take. These were acre lots. The city came in and widened 47th and it took them down. I think we're 0.87, but we're approximately 1 acre lots. Myself, my neighbor to the west, my neighbors to the north have acre lots. The property to my east is a 3-acre plot, and we are centrally located. So again, my presentation is that we have a very mild site impact to any of the properties in and around our neighborhood. And I think that covers all of the aspects of impact that I wanted to mention. Okay, I wanted to bring up, this is 47th Street and West, which is 47th Street dead ends at West Street. The county maintenance yard is located there. There's the Pleasures Topless Dancing Club is also on that intersection. There's large fields at that intersection. There's some storage of some truck bodies there. My point is that clearly and obviously this is a commercial and industrial zone. Moving on to 47th and Meridian, there's a giant field just north and west to northwest of 47th and Meridian is a church. It's Church of Christ. The northeast corner, that's owned by Jeff Lang Realty, and it is a commercial property. Moving on to the east is Euclid Street, residential neighborhood to the north. To the south is the giant soccer facility. It's Sedgwick County Soccer Association. There's traffic. I think they have parking for 1,000 vehicles, if I'm not mistaken. It's a great number of vehicles, and that's the large. It's I think 100 and some odd acres. It's a giant property. Just a little further to the south. I'm sorry, to the north is the other soccer field. I believe that's the AYSO soccer complex, and likewise they have some 14 soccer fields there, and such. Just moving further east, this is the maintenance and repair facility for the Sedgwick County soccer field. They have outside storage of landscape and earth equipment. They have a large metal shed whereby they do, ironically, the exact same thing that we do. They work on small engine equipment for the Sedgwick County soccer field. This is 350 feet, I believe, from my front door. So moving on, there's the drainage ditches along 47th Street on either side from that point. Moving on further east is the Westport Airport, which is, again, a multi-acre facility. This is, I think, 60 or 70 feet from my front door. Is a again, multi-acre, I'm sorry I don't have the numbers, multi-acre FAA certified airstrip. They launch hot air balloons and land single-engine aircraft from this spot. This is directly diagonal across the street from my property.
Could you finish up in 30 seconds?
Okay, I'm sorry, sir. This is Millwood Court, Millwood Circle, which is directly across from my property. Every single residence, this looks directly onto my property. Every single resident of this cul-de-sac has signed our support petition. Every single one of them. This looks directly into my front yard. Everyone that's most definitively visually impacted by my business has signed our support petition to keep us in business. This is the house next door I was talking about to my west. It has a 50 by 70 garage building on it, and there's privacy fence between my property and this property, and there's arbor vitae trees in between. I'm sorry, I think it's moving in the wrong direction.
Your time is up, and I'm sure you'll have more time because I know there's a number of questions.
Okay, can I go back to the plat map if I'm going the right? Oh, I'm sorry, this is, I think, I'm sorry. Right, yeah, this is the Chavez property. They own the property back behind us. This is looking at the dead end street. I think Dave brought that up. This is rear of the property from.
Okay, we'll go to questions now.
I'm sorry.
Sir, you looked at, on the packet that we got, there's a number of recommendations staff has given us.
Yes, sir.
Should we approve the PUD, some conditions, are you in agreement with those conditions? You
Yes, sir.
said all of those.
We're actually in compliance with the vast majority of those already, and we have no arguments whatsoever with being involved in approving all of those.
I have a couple of questions. One of the aerial photos shows a substantial amount of equipment stored outside in your yard. Is that still there?
No, sir. I've got a picture at the chairman's. This is the front of our property. This is the rear. Sir, this is my backyard.
My next question would be the large building there doesn't show on the aerial photo. I'm curious how you got a building permit for that if you're in violation of the zoning ordinance.
Sir, it's my understanding I can get you in contact with our builder and to answer that question. I said we hired a builder who specializes in this type of building. So my understanding is, this is smaller than the building to the west of us. The building next door, I said the gentleman to the west of me has a 50 by 70 structure. This is a 30 by 60, and there are a number of buildings of this nature in this zoning. So apparently it must not be contrary to the zoning, sir.
I asked the staff to research this, and they don't show any building permits on this property since 1999.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that, sir. Like I said, I contracted a group to build the building.
Yeah, I heard you. So I'm concerned about the safety of that building and your neighbors. It's right against your property line. Would you agree to have that building inspected by the code people?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is that a condition of this?
Questions?
No, that's all I have.
I'm sorry. We built the building, I want to say in June. The building was built, if I may, the building was built, and this is going to answer a previous question on citations from the office. The building was built in response. We were cited, and I went down and picked up the citation, and Mr. Urad is correct. The citation went to warrant over a misunderstanding. And I don't think he's with us anymore. Dale Johnson was the inspector. I think he's since retired. But if there's somebody from neighborhood, we probably have his notes that can speak to this. A letter was sent out. A registered letter was sent out to the premises, but was not picked up or signed by me. And this is, for the record, this is in our court case with environmental. it was signed for and picked up by a non-employee and not myself. And so I never knew that the letter was sent out. It went to warrant. I was very surprised that we had it. I went down to the warrant office, picked up the notification. The notification said sheerly and strictly, and I have this, our violation was for outside storage of salvage materials. So,
The question was, when was the building built?
right, I'm sorry, I was answering, a previous gentleman had asked about when, about the number of citations we'd received and when we had received them. And I was speaking to, so then, in response to this citation, we built the building to come in compliance with the citation for salvage materials. So, that's the long answer, I suppose, I'm sorry? June. I said, I believe it was June of last year.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Were there other questions that he said he could answer earlier? Could he answer those at this time? Answer them shortly and to the point?
Yes.
Want to
Is that
rephrase
okay?
those? Only if you can rephrase them.
Shortly,
I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Can I know the questions, if I may. How much parking do we have? We have parking for 12 vehicles all told.
8?
We have paved parking for 6, and we have additional parking for the other 6. So, but
You're willing to pay those, so.
if necessary to fit in with the compliance, yes.
How many of those are inside?
2 are inside. And the question was posed, I said, how many citations have we had from zoning in that span? And it's 3. We've had, I said, there was a citation for outside display, I think 2 years back, and we moved the items there. And then there were these 2 were in conjunction. I said the one we answered by building the building, and then when we went in to say we were in compliance, they said, oh, well, there's a secondary part of that. That's you're running a business out of S5 zone. My biggest problem is that I've spent a lot of money on that building, and it's, I might have been a little more.
You answered that question.
Okay, thank you.
Dale, isn't that something you said we shouldn't consider?
Yeah, the violations, courts have ruled, and Jeff can help, but courts have ruled that when you're considering a new case, you're not supposed to take into account past violation, because past violations don't mean that in the future they will violate. But
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Richards?
the planning commission, if for some reason they should decide to deny the case, they should not use past violations as a factor for a denial.
How many employees do you have?
I have, we're a seasonal business, so I have, in our full season, we have probably 6 employees. In the down season, it's usually just me, sometimes one other employee. Oh, and if I may, I'm sorry, the home occupancy does not allow for any non-resident employees. That was another question someone had. You can't have any outside employees that are not resident on the property with a home occupation license.
Okay, we'll ask for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak first. Seeing none? Oh.
Joe, we had a guy up here too.
What? Okay. You have 3 minutes, and please state your name and address.
Okay, my name is Steve Gross, and I am a employee of Masters Mowers, and I live on that residence. This man's done wonders for me.
Would an employee be considered a part of the applicant?
Not unless they're a member of the corporation or LLC or named on the application.
Keep.
Well, it does make a difference to me because without this place, I have no home and no job. He's bailed me out of a pretty bad predicament and been a good person to me, done a lot of favors for me, and I'm on site all the time and always willing to make the neighbors happy with whatever problems they may find with our business. And I provide a service for people that can't afford these high dollar shops. So in my behalf, it's kind of my livelihood. And that's really about all I can tell you. I just hope for approval.
Okay. Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, next speaker. Thank you for stating your views. Yeah, up here. Then we'll come back.
Good afternoon. My name's Jerry Rochelle. I've lived in Wichita since 1999. And a few years after I moved in here in Wichita, probably 15 years ago.
You have an address?
Name and address.
Oh, I am sorry. Jerry Rochelle, 1863 South Chautauqua, Wichita, Kansas, 67211.
Thank you, sir.
As I've already previously spoke, I moved in Wichita in 1999. And since that time, for 20 years, I was a restaurant manager for a local restaurant chain. And I retired last year. I'm 72 years old. And during that time, I have brought equipment, chainsaw, lawnmowers, other edgers, other small things. And I've gotten acquainted with Steve because he's an open-minded, considerate person. I've even gone as far to asking on many occasions by phone or in person to pray for my family or friends. And I consider him to be very close in that area because I knew he was a preacher. And I have witnessed his building because I pay attention to these type of details, that it's always immaculate the way it looks. And the employees are always nice and considerate. Steve is always nice. Anytime I call him, he will always return my call if he doesn't have an opportunity to answer it right then. And the type of customers he has that comes in there are a wide cross of people, but they always seem to be reputable, clean. I have 3 children that all have yards, and I have an ex-wife that has a yard, and he services and maintains all of their lawn equipment in a very reasonable and very fair manner. And I think it would be a shame to lose that availability to myself and the other customers he has throughout the years to have to move or just quit being in that business and be doing something else. I've always, and he didn't ask me to come here today. He told me about this hearing and I said, I want to be there and I will speak. And I'm not accustomed to speaking to public groups. And so I wanted to do this for Steve and for his family. Thank you very much.
Fine job. Anybody have a question for the speaker? Next speaker.
I'm Pastor Ron Anderson. I live at 2239 West 46th Street, South Wichita, Kansas. I am one of Mr. Masters' neighbors. I'm here today for one reason, is because of Mr. Masters and the way he conducts business. I don't usually get involved in these things, but he not only services our mowers for the church, but he services my mowers and many friends of mine's mowers. And he doesn't just service mowers. He goes into the community and helps people. He found out I was down after an accident, and he came to my house a number of times wanting to know if there was something he could do to help. He has been to other people's houses, moving things, helping people when they need a hand up. He's not one to give a hand out, but he will give a hand up. He's been an asset to our neighborhood. I don't always agree with what Steve does and how Steve does it, but I don't agree with a lot of people. So I'm here to just sing his praises a little bit and let y'all know that he does a good service for the neighborhood, and that's all I got. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Questions? Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Chad Davis. I am the owner and operator of All City Appliances and Heating and Air. Being a fellow family businessman,
Yes, sir.
and I've known Steve for
Sir, your address?
1103 West Mentor here in Wichita. Mr. Masters actually provides more of a service to the community than some of the people realize. Without his business and his charity, there would be a whole lot of old lawnmowers in backyards. Mr. Masters collects those, parts them, recycles, and provides a niche in the lawn care community that people otherwise wouldn't be able to afford because they just can't afford to go spend $800 on a new lawnmower when they can buy one from Mr. Masters for $200. So he's always there. He takes care of the customers. More than a few times I've seen him repair things free of charge because the customer just couldn't afford it. He provides a recycling ability to the community. When he tears them apart and parts them out, the carcasses get hauled to the proper place and not the city dump. They get hauled to the scrap metal yard. So he helps keep the community clean, and he's an upstanding citizen and a pastor. And for that reason, he should be able to allow to continue to provide for his family in the best way he knows how. Thank you.
Questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please. Yes, sir. You have 3 minutes. State your name and address for the record.
I'm Leroy Kirkpatrick, and I live at 4715 South Fern. And the complaints I've got that he just cleaned up all, as the lawnmowers in the back, he just cleaned that up this summer. Probably because he got told to. Like the man was saying here a while ago, about every building he's got on that place has to be on a property line. Now, I'll probably get an argument over that, but anyway. He's constantly over there firing up lawnmowers and trimmers, which that's his job, but sometimes it gets pretty late at night when he does it. There's a big old pile of tires in the back of that great big shed that come, you can see them way over the fence. Nobody's touched that. A lot of, the one guy said that, you know, he lives at the residence. Well, a lot of them live in the house next door to me because the way I understand it, they're in some kind of program where they get out of jail and he gives them a job. And also I'd like to know how much he pays them, because I've got friends that had to go over there once or twice. And I'm not saying this is everybody that works for him, don't get me wrong, but they'll come over there and speed into the house that he's renting out to them and then has to tear out. And of course I'll get a big argument on this. I've watched drugs change hands. Now, the cops have never found anything or anything like that, but whatever. And now he's got a floodlight that shines right down Millwood. These guys will probably know about that. They've had several fights at the house next door, which I didn't call the cops on because I was trying to be a nice guy, which I'm finding out I'm not very nice. He's told the police and everything that he was absolutely selling the house, no problem. And then it was online, a kid showed it to me online, that he wanted $82,000 for it. And then he's trying to rent it out yesterday. So I got it said in a little bit of after I leave here, I'll have a whole bunch of stuff to tell you, but I can't think of a lot of it now. But we've had, you know, And like I said, I haven't had no problems with 90% of them guys, but there are always the bad people. And like I said, I went over there and talked to him several times about it. No results. I've asked him also how in the hell he can sell mowers and all that, excuse my language, how he can sell mowers and all that without no permits or nothing. No, he sells all cars, has no dealer tag.
Can you wrap it up in 30 seconds?
You got it. I'm done.
Oh, you're done.
I could go on and on. I could go on for days, man.
Okay, any questions for the speaker? Thank you.
I got one statement to make. I don't know what they do, but they come in at night unloading a bunch of stuff off a trailer. And my bedroom's right next to the house that they stay at. And it's bang and beat and pound all night long. And my wife's not in good health. And
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Next speaker.
Russ Avey, Boffman Company. I am not agent for the applicant, and I'm requesting, since I have to leave here for another meeting in Hutchinson, time to spend just a few seconds to state kind of some of the things that I've been working with Mr. Masters on in putting together the PUD drawing.
The agent?
I am not the agent for the applicant. He is representing himself, so I'm not going to be able to discuss any of this during the rebuttal, but there are a few other things that I just wanted to kind of state for the record.
Let's have a motion if we allow this.
How much time you need, Russ?
1 minute.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Our office was approached to represent this case. We had worked it out with Mr. Masters that the best thing going forward was us to give him some technical advice of what zoning is, how to go through the zoning process, to put the PUD drawing together, working with staff on that. And I've been able to meet with Mr. Masters at his residence a few months ago to prepare the plan. I can say that you know, this compliance issue is one of those tricky things that's been addressed, but quite frankly, here we are trying to rectify the problem. So I have not seen the property at its worst, but I have seen the investment that Mr. Masters has made on the property, and we work with multiple clients over the years who are in the exact same situation. They have certain limited financial resources. They've made a good faith effort in trying to clean up a lot of the environmental issues and the equipment in the yard. But I will also say this, these are very large lot developments along 47th Street, and as such, the building, the off-site house, all of these things I don't think are germane to the zoning issue at hand in front of you. Obviously not the off-site property, clearly. But anyone with a building permit can build a structure similar to the one that Mr. Masters built on the property. I would be able to store certain materials on my property as a single-family residential homeowner. So there are a lot of things that are being conflated with each other, and I think I was just going to speak to the point that this is a limited zoning. The PUD allows us, as Mr. Yearout mentioned, limited scope on what would be permitted going forward, and I would hate to see you know, there's a lot of people here to speak, and I realize this, and hopefully, prior to any negative determination, I think the commission could probably see a little bit of room for flexibility in coming back after a deferral if that's warranted in this case. I think there's a lot of room for compromise. The staff report I felt was a little bit quick to the denial. And without being able to sit here for the rest of the afternoon to hear the testimony, I would want to temper that statement a little bit. And I'll stand for any questions that you might have for me as the person that put the PUD together for Mr. Masters.
Questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Speaker.
Not yet. Yeah. Go ahead.
Once everybody's spoken.
Yeah. I got it.
All here. Get this moved. Name is Sean West. It's 5512 South Hanley Avenue. Also have a home at 4412 South Hanley Avenue. I've been a resident of Wichita all my life. I've grown up in the southwest side of Wichita, actually right within a mile of Steve Masters either way. He's been there since I was 17 years old. I just turned 36. Everybody knows he's there. He's always offering summertime help positions. When I met him, I was in need of work at the time. I became partially disabled. Couldn't find work. People knew I had my neck surgery coming up. I'd worked in general construction all my life. The last 4 years, I went back to school, got into medical, being on pain medicine, having the surgery coming up. Nothing in medical would hire me. Nobody would take me on. Steve Masters opened his doors not only as an employee, but as a friend. He's always the first person to help you get up, as others have said. He's helped me and my family numerous times. If I ever get in a bind, my wife works for the Sedgwick County, and she's been there about 5 years now. Living off one income with all my medical bills and stuff is hard. I have 3 children. If we get a little bit behind, I can always turn to him, and I can always get a frontage on money owed. I can go in and I can answer the phones for a little while if I'm feeling well enough. I can go up and handle customers for a little while if I'm feeling well enough. He's never on me about paying him back or anything like that. It's kind of on a good faith system. I can sit here and speak about Steve Masters and how he handles that neighborhood and everything else all day long. My grandma, Eula West, has been at the courthouse for 48 years. She just turned 90. She's probably going to have to retire. She just had a stroke in her eye. He was one of the first guys up there. He doesn't know her. He's never met her. First guys up there praying for her with me at the hospital. Brought us a bunch of durable medical equipment for her. Did the same thing with me here recently. I've had some eye trauma and some other health issues. First guy at my door, not only bringing groceries because he knew I wouldn't be able to get out, but also medicine. Calls me every day, prays with me. Every time we get in a bind, I can call and I know somebody I got to pray with. As far as the planning goes, we always outreach to the neighbors. We go out there throughout that whole neighborhood. I'm going to run over my time if I don't get this out, but the house that the gentleman was just speaking of that's behind us, there's a reason why he has that house. That was a customer that lived behind us and a neighbor. He passed away and left the house to Steve Masters. That's the way we handle business. Did have to go to court. There's a family that came out of town, but that guy, we took him every week to get his groceries. We took him to church. We did a lot for him. And also, one last thing on your map.
Your time is up, but I'll give you another 30 seconds if you can wrap it up.
Okay, yeah. One last thing I wanted to point out is what you didn't see and then on the map in front of you, everything to the east of us, the property directly to the east of us, we've tried to acquire. Everything east of that all the way to the Sonic is fields. Jeff Lang just bought a bunch of it, and it is for commercial real estate. Where your mouse is. Oops. So this is all Jeff Lang and also H.D. Mills, who just passed away, and his son has taken that over, and they have both told us that is all going to be commercial property. So everything from that corner, 47th and Broadway, to Steve Masters' house is eventually planned to be commercial real estate property. I'm assuming they're going to have to come in and do the same thing before that happens, but I've never seen them also lose in a case where it's just all field land. The one complaint we have is the guy to the west of us, the homeowner.
Your time is up.
Okay.
Sorry. But
I was just going to say that's the reason we've plotted all the new buildings and everything to the east side of that land, so it's not near his garage where he does his auto work. So.
Any questions for the speaker? I don't think there were. Okay, next speaker, thank you. State your name and address, and you have 30 seconds.
Good afternoon. My name is Pete Chavez. I live at 4722 South Millwood. I am the property that is just north of Mr. Masters' property, and I am the house that is just west of the house that he owns that they've been talking about where everybody's living. I have been at my location for 11 years. I have lived at the end of Millwood for 35 years. 35 years in my home and growing up in my parents' home across the street at 4721 South Millwood. The reason I bought my property is so that I can take care of my parents as they get older, and it was a little oasis in the south side of Wichita. I don't see much that goes on in the front of his business, but I see a lot that goes on in the back of his business. Millwood is a dead-end street, 2 barricades, identify that. there was 2 barricades that identified that. Steve came to us years back and talked to us about removing one of the barricades so we can have access to his property. And he did. He said he'd put it up after his deliveries. That happened for a while, and then after a while, we had to start putting it up ourselves. And then the next thing we knew, that he has gone out there, or had his employees go out there, and they cut the posts off so the barricade would not go back up. And then they did something with the barricade. We don't know what happened with the barricade, and that was set by the city. Steve does not know what goes on in the back of his business. He thinks when he goes to sleep that all his employees do the same, but they don't. We get woken up all through the night from car doors slamming, gates slamming, and cars coming and going all through the night. We have called the police because one of his employees was looking through my son's car that was parked on 47th Street in front of our Millwood, in front of our property. And they did end up handcuffing him, and I think they took him away. We've had one of their vehicles, one of his employees, parked between my son's vehicle and his girlfriend's vehicle, which was parked in the street in front of my parents' house and my house, going through his vehicle. And we didn't know what was going on, so we called the cops, and they came out and checked it out. Now, this is like 2 or 3 in the morning. Because of his business, we get a lot of truck and trailer traffic down Millwood, which is a dead-end street. With all that traffic, there's a lot of mud when it's rainy out that gets trailed all the way down Millwood, 46th, down to even down to 45th Street on Millwood. My parents had to end up putting rocks on the corner of their driveway because people were trying to back out of his property and with truck and trailers, and they ended up running over her bushes. I have stopped and voiced my opinion to a couple of them a couple times, and all they do is just drive off. We hear lawnmowers starting up all the time, backfiring as they are being tuned, and we hear gas-powered washers running a lot as they are cleaning the grease and grime in the backyard, in the yard. So I don't know what happens with all that grease and grime. We have talked to Steve a couple times about what happens back there, and he didn't know. He has said that he didn't know that these things were happening. So being a business owner, he should know all aspects of his business, and he doesn't.
Thank you. Your time's up.
Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Okay. I would like just to remind the speakers to try to keep the comments towards the zoning case per se and why it should be granted or not granted.
Was it in mine not?
I didn't, I'm just
asking a question. I'm verified.
We record this and it's transcribed, so if people are talking that are not at the mic, we can't pick it up, and we can't pick it up with more than one person speaking at one time. So please hold your questions from the audience. It's not fair either side.
Mr. Warren?
Just piggybacking on what you said in terms of what's applicable, I appreciate the character issues, but this is we're dealing with zoning issues. So, if you can keep your comments to aspects that have to do with the physical, I mean, that's why what you said did apply. But also, we had a number of speakers, and this can go on. If you've heard it before, if somebody else has said your thought, we don't need to hear it again, so I appreciate that.
And just because I made that statement now, it doesn't mean I was referring to you, sir. I just
want to clarify it.
Okay, next speaker.
I'm Nathan Brumbelow. My address is 2927 South Euclid, but I own the property right next door to Steve to the east. I've never had a problem with the guy. He's always helped me out whenever I need a lawnmower fixed. He keeps his property clean. That's something I appreciate. And he helps mow my grass when I'm not able to get to it. I don't really know what you said you didn't want to hear about or anything, so I'll just stop it there.
Wanted to hear why you think the zoning should be changed.
Well, I'm a small business guy too, okay? And I have employees. I've had bad and I've had good. Sometimes you don't know what you get. I think Steve's a good guy and he does a good service over there. And his front yard, when we saw a picture of it, it looked nice and pretty. It looks that way every time I see it, and I'm over there a lot.
Great.
You guys have a nice day.
Thank you, sir, for coming. Next speaker.
Commissioners, my name is Max Fisher. I live at 4803 South Millwood Circle, which is directly across the street from Steve Masters' business. And my remarks are directed specifically to the storage of unsightly materials in his yard. I bought my house in October of '98. Shortly after that, Steve moved in, started his business, and I have yet to see an unsightly yard after all these years. The place is always neat and well kept. I have even gone over there from time to time and looked at various items that he has up for sale. Various employees have approached me. They were always friendly, eager to help. I think it would be a mistake to deny this because of the simple fact that Steve does a service for a number of people, including the employees. We're talking about people that are, financially strapped. We're talking about people that are in trouble with the law or had been, and he helps them out. He provides a job for them so they can gain a little self-worth, and I think that's to be commended. And I think that's probably covered about all I got.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none. Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Rhonda Moore. I live at 1508 West 47th Street South. I am the neighbor directly west of Mr. Masters. I don't understand who would not consider shutting him down. Not only is the parking an issue, they park in our driveway. We have nothing to do with his business. We go out there, ask them to move. We either get, oh, I'm sorry, okay, we'll move now, or well, we're just looking. No, I'm sorry, we're not an extended parking lot. I understand people need jobs. I have no issue with that. The issue is he does not need to have a business on 47th Street. You have the soccer field down the street, traffic for the school buses, fall, spring soccer games. You never know when an accident could and can happen. Yes, granted, one has not happened now, but that does not mean it won't happen in the future. That's all I have to say. This is just getting very sad and ridiculous.
Ma'am?
Since you live right next door to the west, at the nighttime, there's been remarks about noise coming from there. Have you witnessed any of that?
Not in the north part of his yard, no, because we're more towards the south side of 47th Street. Our residence is right there on the street.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Richardson.
How long have you lived in the property next door there?
I have lived there since 1992, 93-ish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Next speaker, please.
My name is Aura Seba. I live at 4651 South Oak, which is just a few blocks east of here. There's a lot of people, especially in the summertime, that ask if I need my lawn mowed. And my husband, God bless him, cannot fix a lawnmower or a weed whacker to save his life. I don't know why, but he can't. Steve's business has helped us out several times.
This is the type of the question isn't whether or not the business is valid. The question is it valid at this location or another location? If the question is this the right location? I appreciate that he's got good customers. I appreciate that, you know, that he's does great things, but that doesn't enter into our consideration. Is there a reason why it should be here? And so if you could speak to that, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely, I was just getting to that.
I'm sorry for interrupting that. I apologize.
Because it's so close by and he has an established business, we can trust Steve and his business to give us a worthy working service for our lawnmowers and whatever else. Because he's nearby, he's reliable. He's not just some guy walking down the street saying, "Hey, can I mow your lawn?" And there's not that kind of reliability and what's the word I'm looking for? Just trust in established goodness, I guess. I totally lost the word I was looking for there, sorry. As a business, to just be there for everybody in the neighborhood. I guess that's all I got.
Questions for? I guess what you're saying is you're thankful that the business is close to your property. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, next speaker, please.
My name is Kira Miller. I live at 1927 South Ida, Wichita, Kansas. Steve is my stepdad. He hasn't always been my stepdad, but my grandpa has told me many times in business that where you're at and when your hours are should always be the same. It should always be consistent, and people should be able to rely upon you. He's been in the same place more than half my life, with the same hours every summer, the same winter hours every year. I mean, sometimes the employees change. I was an employee there for the first year after I got out of prison, and that was several years ago. He gave me a chance, and I was able to move on to better things and an awesome life. And it would be detrimental to the family, to maybe not detrimental to customers, but when you move, and this happened to me very recently in business, you have an established place, people know exactly where to go, know when to be there, and then you're gone. Your customers go away too. Your money goes away. Your bank account's drained. I mean, you go bankrupt. That is what happens. I mean, could he move? Sure. But should he have to? I mean, he's been there for 20 years. That is a really long time to be an established businessman anywhere. I mean, it's a smaller business, but when you're in one place for so long with an expansive customer base, I mean, most of these folks are older folks or, people that don't fix things well, so probably aren't super internet savvy. I mean, they know where to go and they know when to go there. Taking that away, I mean, that's wrong. You lose your business. He would have to shut down. I mean, it wouldn't be financially justifiable to move and start all over from where he once was 20 years ago. I mean, that's just not right at all. So that's all I really have to say. Is there questions?
My name is Joyce Garrett, and I live at 4710 South Fern Avenue. I am here to oppose Steve Masters' application. I care very deeply about the development of Southwest Wichita. It saddens me every time I see a business that goes under down there, and you just have an empty building. I do believe there's plenty of locations that are open at this time along South Seneca, just north of 47th Street, that are available that would be a lot better location for a business like that. My other concern about it being in the location that it's at now is the parking and the environmental things that I don't know who would be checking on that. The city seems to worry a lot about groundwater contamination. And so I think the facility that you use to work on lawnmowers and such should be one that falls under guidelines of keeping the groundwater uncontaminated and everything. That's all I've got to say. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Schertz. I live at 1508 West 47th Street, which is just west of Mr. Masters. We had a major tornado in that block in '99, and it was a year or two before everything come back together, and it was after that before he moved in, or I should say he moved in after the tornado. We've had a lot of conversations about people parking, especially in my driveway, because they don't want to park in his driveway. They get blocked in. I used to drive through the yard into my driveway. I had to put up a fence, which I didn't really want, but I had to. They still park in my driveway. I have to go out and run them out every now and then. I shouldn't have to. I've had a few arguments in the driveway. I was threatened in my driveway over it, and it won't happen again, but I'd say so. But I hope it don't go through. That's all I got to say.
Questions for the speaker? Thank you. I see an indication of how many more speakers we might have. Maybe 5 or 6? Go ahead. I'm sorry, lost out.
Hi, my name is Deanne Ellefson. I live at 1850 South Santa Fe in Wichita, Kansas. And yeah, I could stand up here all day long and sing praises about Steve. But the thing I would like to address is the parking issue. We had a parking issue over there. I believe Steve put cones out. One day he was doing a yard sale for the church, and we put cones out and blocked that driveway. The next thing I know, there is a man in my face screaming at me about some guy that had parked over there in his driveway. And I said, sir, I understand what you're talking about, but his employee made that guy move. His exact words is, I will not speak to you until you move your vehicle. And and the next thing I know, I have this neighbor in my face very upset. And I'm like, sir, I'm very sorry. We've done everything. We asked the guy to leave. We all have ups and downs in our neighborhoods. We'd all like to change things. I do know Steve has been there for 20 years, and I don't know much about the zoning and all of that stuff. It did shock me whenever he told me that, this was going on. I believe that one of the guys here today opposing this also has an auto repair shop directly next door to Steve. So it's kind of like the kettle calling the kettle black, And just for the record, I am Steve's cousin, and I have been to his home many, many, many times, and never have I seen anything out of place. The guys have been very well-mannered, polite, and do their job. And they do a great service to our community. Hey, thanks, guys.
Questions?
Where was this garage sale that you were talking about?
The garage sale was probably about a couple of years ago.
So where?
Where? It was at Steve's house. It was just a little community garage sale.
Okay, so it does have to do with this piece of land then?
I beg your pardon, sir?
It does have something to do with this piece of land.
Yes,
So,
yes,
okay,
sir.
I-
Yeah, we were at his home and we were having a garage sale
Okay,
and,
that-
yeah.
That's fine.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up, but I wanted to show you the parking issue and how it was addressed very quickly and how the neighbor got out of hand and was very scary very quickly.
I just wanted to be sure it was at this piece, so I
Right.
didn't understand. Okay,
No, thank you, sir. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Anything else?
Speaker.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Masters. Yes, I'm Steve Master ex-wife. Now I live in 4560 South Hydraulic.
Point of order. That's part of the
4,
application.
5,
Just
6.
a second. Just a second.
Ex-wife.
Oh, I'm Chinese, so my English no good.
No, no,
I'm
so-
sorry.
So you're not
about
presently married to him?
what?
Not presently married to him?
Yeah, I married with Steve Master. It's 2015 year. But 2015 year I married with him. But I divorced with him 2016 year. I'm so sorry about that because I'm Chinese. My English no good, so I cannot take care of his daughter. Very good. This job is too hard to me, so we divorced. But now I still love him, because he still take care of my life in Wichita. My family, anybody out in China, I'm alone in here. So I really need somebody help me, take care of me. Yes, Steve Master is really good man. I today come here, I just want to ask her, government officer, please no close his business in his house plans because he need it and his family need it and we, his friend and me need it too. So I want to tell you something is my feeling. He gave me my feeling. When I married with him this year, he many times take me go to see his customer. We many times look somebody pull over car in road, and then he pull over car in road too. I asked him why. He said, I think he need help. And then he go to ask, do you need help? And many times he take a long time help people. But these people he don't know. He don't know who is them. But he still go to help. And many times I just watch him. And then he help finish. People give him money. He said, no, I don't take your money because I help you. This is my God work. Oh my God, I think in China, I never see people see him because people help people always want to do something, but still help people large, never want to do something. My time finished?
You do another 30 seconds and then we'll be done?
Oh my God, too short time. Okay, I just say a little bit more. So now I want to ask her, anybody, I really help you. I really want to, you please keep my ex-husband Steve Master business in his plan because he's a really good man. So we love it. We love him. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Larry Brown. I live at 3242 South Wichita Street in Wichita, Kansas. What I can tell you about Steve Masters is that I'm involved in the ministry of my own. I'm on lawns for people who are like disabled, don't have any money, or just, I do it for free. And to get it started, yes, I'm getting to that. Thanks a lot. I lost my train of thought. Like I was saying beforehand, when I started my ministry, he donated a lawnmower to me, so I didn't have to go out and buy one, and he helps me maintain it for free. Now I'm getting to why I think he should stay. And I'm gonna say this, okay? I'm gonna be honest with you right now. I'm feeling really angry right now, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because I feel like he's a good man, and I feel like he should stay where he is. And I'm gonna end it right on this note. I feel like the ones who oppose him, the ones that are saying bad things about him, I'm gonna say this: they need to take a long, good look at themselves.
Speaker, please.
My name is Helen Lynch. I live at 1850 South Santa Fe Street in Wichita, Kansas. And I see nothing wrong with that being there. If you look at any city street in the Wichita, unless it's the $200 or $300, $1,000 homes, they don't have businesses in their yard. But just about any street in the city, you'll find somebody with some kind of small business there trying to make a living. And I don't see a problem with where it's at. I mean, they say that some of them have said something about parking. Well, most people's not in a great big old huge hurry, especially older people. So if we're blocked in when we're parked there, all you have to do is wait a couple minutes and that person will see you need to leave, so they'll come move over so you can get out. Or just sit there and relax, you know, and then you can move when they move. So I don't see a problem. That's all I have to say.
Questions for the speaker? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brett Rowland. I live at 1319 West 52nd Street South. Steve took me in and kind of gave me a learning experience and let me work with his guys, and it was very nice that he was nearby and he saw that I had a passion for small engines, and he helped me out and let me come in and have a learning experience. And I don't think he should be shut down for how long that he's been there, and it hasn't been a problem till now. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there another speaker?
Jonathan Kolazek, 8901 West 47th Street South. I first became acquainted with Mr. Masters, I believe it was year 2010, 2011. I'm a retired City of Wichita inspector, Department of Public Works Engineering Division, 43 years service. We were reconstructing the pavement with the street in front of his residence, or from Seneca over to Meridian. I had, at that time, opportunity to observe coming and going of his clientele, which never seemed to be anything approaching a traffic jam or a hazard to any of the other motoring public. I also observed the condition of his backyard at the time. There was a lot of salvaged material lying around. Last June, while I was there to have my lawnmower serviced, I saw his new building and his new, well, his property is cleaned up. I think he has every intention in the world of complying with any of the wishes of the Planning Commission. I think there might be a circular driveway in the works. I don't know, that would expedite traffic in and out of his location. He's willing to bend over backwards. He performs a good service for the community. His low overhead can make that $100 oil change and spark plug change and air filter change on your lawnmower over on Southwest Street a lot cheaper. If you look around, a lot of people that are speaking here have gray hair. That means limited income, fixed income. He's there to service these people. If he has to move, he's going to have to get a place of business. It's all a building that's already established with maintenance problems. Probably, certainly the overhead's going to go up. He's going to have to pay rent on a property. Now, once again, I think his intentions are to comply with the Planning Commission. I would hope you all would approve this variance. Thank you.
Questions
Any
for the speaker?
questions?
Thank you
Thanks
for your
again.
testimony. Next speaker, please. Anyone else? Are you?
She is not part of, I'm sorry, she's not part of the ownership structure, and she is not listed on the
I think she can speak.
Hi, my name is J.D. Masters. I live at 1522 West 47th Street South. I'm currently married to Steve. We got married in December, so very short time. I would like to point out that the property directly to our east is for sale. Lang Realty has told us specifically they are looking into buying it. They want to expand their holdings on 47th Street for commercial uses. So this seems silly. The people who have complained are complaining about a rental property that we threw those people out. They are no longer living there. And we have put it up for sale, which does not preclude us renting it. All of the complaints are from a former employee living in that rental house. And we did get rid of them. So that's really all I have to say.
Questions? Thank you. If that's the last speaker, you now have a 2-minute rebuttal time.
I'll try to speak quickly onto the rebuttal. Mr. Kirkpatrick levied a number of complaints about noise and comings and goings. If I may, I'm sure he'll clarify, all of those had to do with the rental property. None of those were relative to my business at large.
No, because I thought.
Hey, sir.
Keep your comments directed here.
Sure. But those complaints were, I said, relative to the property next door to him, which is my rental property, has nothing to do with this PUD application. Likewise, I think the complaints of Mr. Chavez behind us, he's next door also to that rental property. I think a lot of the issues involved in noise and comings and goings were relative to that property, had no bearing and basis whatsoever on this application for PUD and what we do. Mr. and Mrs. Moore next door have complained about parking. To my knowledge, there have been a few opportunities where people have parked in their drive. I did approach them directly and advise them that I would, at my expense, put up a sign in their property that says no more shop parking. I told them I would spare no expense. I would meet their needs however necessary to mitigate that need. Mr. Moore turned me down. I'm sorry, Mr. Schertz turned me down on that opportunity, but I did try to make that offer to him. As far as parking drives go, Mr. Schertz, to the west of me, has a commercial building. It's larger than mine, and he operates a commercial business from it. and he has customers that park in my drive at times. Then I say, hey, I'm sorry, you'll need to move over. You're looking for that guy next door. There's tow trucks that have backed into my drive. Mr. Schertz runs an automotive repair business from his garage immediately west of me. And I've had tow trucks back into my drive, and I've just walked out and said, hey, you're looking for the guy next door. To me, that's part of my principal rebuttal is that the gentleman next door to me runs a commercial enterprise. I run a commercial enterprise. There's a Sonic drive-in restaurant not a third of a mile down the street. Mr. Lang has sent me a letter specifically. I think I've emailed it to everyone saying that their intention is to buy properties up and down this corridor to convey commercial activity on 47th Street South.
Up, sir.
Can I have 30 seconds to finish, sir? Okay. As far as our location goes in relocating, our business is seasonal. Relocating would be a very difficult burden because there's 4 months out of the year that we just scarcely generate very much income. It's very hard to relocate and have the overhead involved. As stated previously, we've been established in this neighborhood for nearly 20 years. In that span of time, I've personally received very scant complaints. There's been said no criminal complaints and very few zoning and neighborhood environmental complaints. So I feel like we've been diligent in being good neighbors. I'm willing to work with my existing neighbors and with the board to come together and make this process happen. I would proffer that if you folks feel, if you're leaning towards refuting our application, instead to wait. The DAB meeting is in March. If neighbors can come and state their reasons for opposition, I'd like the opportunity to try to meet these needs of my neighbors. So if you're inclined to turn this down today, I'd like to ask that you'd instead defer until after the DAB meeting.
Thank you. We probably have some questions for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Daly.
Yes, I see you have a gate marked at the back of your property going out to Millwood. Can you comment on the barricade that was referred to that had been taken down?
I absolutely can, sir. We spoke specifically with the traffic engineer, and he told me directly that I have the right to egress to and from my property. Because I asked before we ever put the fence up, I said, hey, do we have the right to come and go? And he said, absolutely. He said, nothing and no one can interfere with that. I said, wonderful. The barricades were there as a precaution for folks coming down. My understanding is that traffic engineering didn't supply those, but I asked specifically, hey, can we move those to and fro as needed to open up for our gate? And he told me that yes, we could.
Do you have that in writing, though, from him?
No, I do not,
It
sir.
would be good to, something that severe you should have in writing, so
Sure.
you can include that if
Yes,
you're
sir.
ever
I said
questioned.
he assured me that the law was that egress to my property is a right, and that as such I had the right to come up and down. And likewise, sir, we're cognizant of the footprint and the interactions with our neighbors. So let me just say, there are months on end that we don't open that gate at all. That gate hasn't been opened, I said, 10 times this whole winter season. We try to interdict that so it's not a problem for the neighbors.
Answered that question.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes. Ms.
I want to address a little bit the hours of operation. Because most of the complaints would probably be after dark. Do you have a rule as far as testing mowers or starting them up and so on and so forth?
Sir, I do. And again, if I may, I believe most of the noise complaints were relative pointed at my rental property and not our operations.
There was some there were some related to this.
As far as operations go, 9 a.m. I will not start a machine any earlier than that. I have had customers show up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I've just told them forthwith that, no, I'm sorry, we've got neighbors that are sleeping. Again, I want to be a good neighbor. I understand what that entails. So we do not start any machinery before 9 a.m. The noise ordinance is at 10 p.m. It's exceedingly rare that we do anything after 7 p.m., sir. It's exceedingly rare,
Then I'd like to-
and never any later than 8.
I'd like to address also disposal of the waste of your oils and things like that. What do you usually do with those?
Yes, sir. We gather our waste materials in collectible jugs, and we take them to the Sedgwick County Waste Disposal Yard, which is the legal place for us to do that. They know us very well. We go up there all the time and do that. There's times that we take it to the automotive places where we purchase our oil products. They are required as vendors of petroleum products to also be accepting locations of waste oils. I said we have a well on our property. I don't want contaminants in my drinking water either. And my next door neighbor, I said, Mr. Schertz has a well. I'm fairly certain that if he had contaminants from what we do, you'd be hearing about it now. So, to my knowledge, no one has ever. There's a well on the property to the east. To my knowledge, no one has ever made any mention that there's been any surfactant or issue of that kind whatsoever. We're diligent, I said, in the collection and the disposal of waste of all kinds.
Thank you. One final comment or
Yes, sir.
question is on the parking. Sounds like parking is one of the really sticking points here. And no one seems to know what the restrictions are as far as what the requirements are for the parking here. And I guess we'll go back, and I think Mr. Green had asked earlier about the provisions in here, Mr. Warren, someone did, about the provisions that, should this be approved, that you would abide by all these requirements here.
Absolutely. I'm happy to abide by whatever, whatever provisions the board feels are reasonable. I think there's 9 stipulations that Dave Yearout had put as conditional for them to be able to write off. I'm happy to meet all of those conditions. I don't ever want to be adversarial to my government. I don't ever want to be adversarial to my neighbors.
Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Sir.
The building that was built in June, the 30 by 60 building.
Sir.
What is the use of that?
That's we store it's simply storage, sir. It's storage of inventory and customer machinery.
There's no occupancy as far as people working in it.
No, sir.
How about the building to the south? The perpendicular to building.
I'm sorry, sir. Can I bring up? I'm not sure which one you're.
Next one, right to the south of it. Oh, keep going, on up. That one there.
That building, sir.
Yes.
Again, that's used for storage.
No working being done in a building except, can you point
No,
to the?
sir, we strive to concentrate our work on at the points in the property that are the furthest from any residence.
You point to that building where you do it.
Yes, sir, we do. No, let me get mine. We do work, there's a building here, that's our principal operation, and there's a building here, sir, on the front, it's on the front side of our property, between my home and my garage. That's my primary work area, I said, and it's going to be dead center of the property, as you can see. Corridor, it's approximately 33 feet in, 50 feet in length and 15 feet in width, and this is our primary work area. And I said it's central to our property. That is where the bulk of our work takes place.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
I got another one. There was a U driveway mentioned. Do you have any comment on that?
Again, sir, I'm happy to meet with, I said, either with staff or with the board or with the neighbors and address and hash out any, I said, optimization, to mitigate any involved factors. I want to keep my business. I realize that in order to do that, I've got to make compromises. I'm not opposed to any, I'm happy to do that's the short version.
Let me ask staff, if they do add something that way, do they have to get any other?
Yeah, do we have to change our PUD?
Go through Public
Yeah.
Works to get driveway permits.
Well, they don't have to put that on the PUD then at a later point.
If they go that route, they could ask for an adjustment or an amendment to the drawing.
That'd be an administrative adjustment?
more than likely.
Any other questions?
Yeah. And I don't see in the suggested conditions that there is hours of operation. Is that true? They're not in there?
There are not any listed right now. So if there is a desire to add any, we need to do that as part of a motion.
So,
And I have no opposition to that, sir.
and on a lot of things, we see that if they violate their PUD, then they can be shut down just automatically. Is that, is
Well,
there a reason?
it's not so much shut down, it's more of an enforcement issue at that point. It becomes a zoning violation like any other action would be. And procedurally, if there is something out of whack, they would be notification would be provided in writing, time to correct that or to seek an amendment or whatever needs to be done.
So, and if they have a serious violation and they don't do anything about it after being notified, then you can take action against the,
MABCD would have to notify them, go through the process. This is the zone change. If it's approved,
Okay.
this becomes a zoning district. You can't just void zoning without.
okay, that's what I was wondering on that.
Mr. Masters, you mentioned your neighbor had a repair shop as well.
Yes, sir.
You point to that building for me?
Absolutely. If I can figure out which way, this building, I said, is, it's.
Go back to that plan. I want to see it in the plan. Site plan.
On the plan.
I don't think it's.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That is.
This is the neighboring property to the west, and it's this building at this location off his property.
Is that properly zoned?
It's zoned single family.
How is that allowed to be used?
Well, according to MABCD, and the court, we're able to discern from county records for tax purposes, that's all taxed and recognized as single family. There is no recognition. I've asked MABCD of whether or not they have any information regarding that, and as of today, the answer was no, they do not. They're not aware of any business activity occurring there, but as is the case with any enforcement actions, as I've been told by all the officials with that department, it's complaint-based, so that's
Okay.
where we are on that.
We will bring it back to the committee.
We got a motion? I'd like to put a motion out there as a move with some conditions. One would be the hours of operation from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And secondly, without the equipment display in the front yard. I don't think it makes sense to have, I don't think this is working, equipment display in the front yard of a single-family residential area. We do allow in the PUD a sign which says what his business is. Even his competitors in a LC district can't store their merchandise outside, so I don't think it'd be fair to them, certainly, for this. So I would move approval with the staff conditions with those two exceptions, hours of operation from 9 to 9, and to eliminate the equipment display area in the front yard.
Can you live with that?
Yeah, can I speak to that, sir?
No, just a minute.
Oh.
Do we have a second?
Okay, I'll second it then.
Oh, would that include the other provisions that the staff had?
Yes, absolutely. Mhm. Yeah, all the staff provisions with those two changes.
Got a question for the motion maker, Mr. Richardson. I'm in agreement with the thoughts there in terms of 9 to 9. However, I'm assuming that what you're going for is the noise aspect. Would that allow for him to open at 7, but not
Sure.
not participate
Yeah.
in the actual repair aspect?
Certainly, if there's a way to
That
word that with the staff that makes sense there.
I could see where you might want
Yeah.
to meet with customers, talk about what's going on,
Right.
but not actually start up mowers during that period.
Okay.
Nope.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We have another question from Mr.
Not
Warren.
a question, just a comment as we've gone through this. I appreciate the public input, but the character is not an issue. I mean, you know, you got people that love this guy, and I appreciate that. But that has nothing to do with zoning. You got people that are upset with him, and that has nothing to do with this zoning. When I went and looked at the property, and I looked at the recommendation for denial was based on the character of the neighborhood, suitability for the property. This is not an area that lends itself to residential. This is a 3-4 lane property. Probably in the future, it's going to get busier, and no one is going to want to live on a residential property on something that is going to be that busy. And I don't think there's any doubt that in the future, there will be more business that is coming along there. I do have a question, and I don't know if it's a staff question or what, because I've got a concern about the area that to the off of Millwood, access to the back end of the property, in terms of what, number one, is it actually legal to do that? And are there some conditions that we can put on to mitigate
Let me clarify.
problems with the neighbors at that point?
Let me clarify. Davis Street is a street, right? So you have
It is a
access.
street?
Yes.
He has access to the property.
And I think that's what the traffic engineer would be saying, is that it has frontage on a dedicated street. However, as a condition of the PUD, even though he may legally have that right, you could restrict or eliminate access to that as a condition of approving the PUD if you think that's what is appropriate to make it work with the
I
neighbors.
think there's a half-street right-of-way on Davis, is what it is.
I think that there's a need for access, but I'm not opposed to putting some restrictions on it in terms of either it needs to be paved. I understand we got some of that area is not, that street's not paved. So I'm looking for some help here from, you know, what we could do to.
And I'd be happy to restrict access based on my hours of operation, if that would help ameliorate the neighbors, is to say, hey, we won't use that gate other than during our regular operation hours, so we won't be going through there at 10 o'clock at night, and if that speaks to some of that problem, I'd be happy to add that as a restriction.
I have a question. Can we require gravel or other things? That's not his, he doesn't own it. It's street right away. What can we put conditions on? Here's the thing, if you got a dirt street and you go across there when it's muddy, now you're tracking mud up and down Millwood Street. That's not the neighbor's problem. They shouldn't have to deal with that.
Can I say something about Davis Street?
And I'm happy, sir, to add that as a condition, even if you can't.
Sir, no questions
Point
been
of
asked.
order, you need to be sitting back in the audience at this time, okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
You have a staff question, right?
Yeah.
Or whoever else you want to answer it.
Yeah.
Maybe David?
I'm not sure how you could attach paving or rocking.
That's
There may be a public works standard that if you're gonna access a road, that it has to have something, but I think it would be difficult to attach it to this.
And if I can interject here, Davis is not a through street. It's platted, but it's not a built street. It's Millwood that is paved that dead ends to the north side of this property. And the gate access is really onto Millwood. And if you go back to the picture that I took, that's the street as it exists now. And you can actually, the gate is right behind that dead end street sign. And that's the point of access off of Millwood. Now, this is Millwood looking south at the north end of the property. So now, as far as access, Dale, you have to help me on what the standards are for quote unquote access off of a public street onto your property. There are certain standards that have to be met for a drive entrance, is there not?
Correct, and that's why I was saying it may well be that if they want to leave access, that they direct that Public Works determine what the appropriate standard is. I know in the county, we've used rock to prevent mud from being
We
carried
can
out.
make that a condition of the PUD.
Yeah, I think you could do that.
Could we make, again, I'm talking off the top of my head, I haven't thought this thing through. Could we make a condition, because one of the problems seems to be parking at the front. If we got city staff, traffic, or whoever needs to approve that to see what we could allow to make that a proper entrance, could we require employee parking in that backyard?
Well, the
Well,
provision
listen.
number 1 speaks to parking, and it says they have to have the right.
I'll withdraw that.
Can I interject something here? I guess
only
I want
comment
to,
is-
I want to be supportive of this, but I'm really concerned about how that 30 by 60 building got built and what the access was and what the parking requirements were and everything that MABCD should have acted on if it had been submitted to them. Is that a fair question?
Isn't that something you said we can't consider previous?
Oh, yeah, you can.
If I can interject, I think the point here should be the broader intent behind general provision or statement number 1 on a condition would be not only with respect to parking, but also to access drives, that anything used as part of the business operation also comply with current standards of the city with respect to access drives and other issues on. As far as questions about the building permit, and I did notice in response to a question that Mr. Richardson had asked in a meeting, an email before the meeting, I did check with MABCD. In the file, I've got a copy of their report of all the permits that have been issued against this property going back to 1999, and the only building permit was for an accessory building built in 1999. There are subsequent permits that have been issued for some re-roofing and some electrical work, but nothing with respect to a building. So we will follow up and ask for verification with respect to other buildings, including the one that was built last summer.
Mr. Duell, you've been very quiet today.
I would like to add a condition to this, that the building that was put up without permit be approved by central inspection or whoever for meeting building codes and zoning codes.
An amendment? Is that an amendment to the motion?
Would you accept that? I would. Okay.
Second that amendment?
The second accepted?
That's legal to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I can accept that.
All right, we have a motion. Second?
Okay. Another caveat to throw out, just to think about, that back gate would be used only during daylight hours, because,
Business hours.
well, not daylight, because if they have business hours 9 to 9, then it's gonna be dark some of that time, and that could be a problem with the neighbors at the back. So that's why I'm just throwing it out to get opinions.
I think
That
somebody's got a
complicates
rule
it.
on.
Yeah, that complicates it a little too much, I think.
Okay,
Let's keep
that's
it
fine. I
simple.
just wanted to throw it out.
Let's see if we can review what we got here.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, before we have a vote on the motion, could we have a full understanding of what all is involved with the motion?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
Like maybe Dale could give us an idea?
Well,
Read that back to us. What I have down here is per staff comments, except that, and I modified it a little bit, that the language regarding about running and operating mowers that except, or that outside of the hours of operation of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., equipment will not be started, run, or operated. So that means they could only start and operate stuff between 9 and 9. Then the second thing had to do that there would be no display in the front yard, period. And then the third thing was that any buildings that did not have building permits would be required to be inspected before the zoning is finally approved. Is that what you wanted?
Question. I'm in agreement with this display. Do we have any wording at all on this? Does it, maybe it comes in with one of the 7 conditions, signage?
Yes, there's a provision.
Number 5?
Yeah, number 5.
Okay.
It's a GO, 32 square feet.
Okay. I missed that. Thank you.
Well, the provision number 5, yeah, talks about a 12 square foot sign, which is part of my motion, yeah.
We're good.
Any more discussion?
Dale, do you know what the normal I mean, when can anybody in the neighborhood mow their yard? I don't think we should restrict them any more than what the code requires for them.
Well, then, the problem I was having with the language was that if somehow there's two different classes of equipment there, how's the inspector gonna actually know what he's got? I mean, could say it's equipment that is for display or for sale, but once he goes out there, I don't know how you make a distinction between what's privately owned and what's not, other than just the applicant telling you that's what you got.
Just because of the hours of operation or when a mower can be started up, and if he's mowing his own grass, what can people?
So we could add an exclusion that other than mowing his own property or something to that effect? Okay.
Maintaining his own property.
And I was taking the amendment to be more with respect to repair activity of the rear premise as opposed to, so,
Okay.
and yeah. it's-
You clarify that. All right, any more discussion? I think you've used up your time.
Can I
Mr.
ask
No.
the applicant a question at this point? As a part of the motion, are you in agreement with everything so far?
Yes, sir. I don't have any, I said I don't have any fundamental issues. I said I can live with that. It's the short answer. Dave Yearout made the recommendation that we limit the scope of our display. If somebody would, consider letting us display within operation hours or 2 or 3 machines during operation hours, that would be beneficial, but I'm fine if that's not the case.
That's what I was getting at, because
Yes.
provision number 2 addresses that at no time shall more than 10 lawnmowers be displayed for sale.
We took that
Motion on
out.
the floor is no.
Took it away.
Oh, I know. And so that's why I'm wanting to,
Yeah, I would accept, I would
that's-
accept that as a limiting condition if we can't get something different. I mean, I'd like to be able, like I said, to have, the average, kind of like the good gentleman was saying about starting my own lawnmower, the average guy who wants to sell his mower can park it out in his front yard. I'd be thrilled if they'd give us 2 or 3 display items only during operation hours, would be a lot more beneficial to me. Within the confines of our operation, but if that's, if you're not willing to undertake that, then there's not much I can do.
I guess I have a little problem with that part of the motion, because if this is not gonna be a residential area in the future, and we're justified doing this because it's more commercial at this point.
My point is you couldn't do this if it was a LC, you couldn't
Right,
on a curb. So I think it's reasonable to not have those on display.
I got you.
You'd have to have GC zoning or that, and that's car lots and everything else. So I think it's reasonable to exclude display in the front yard.
In the future, if this changes, the whole neighborhood changes, you can always come back.
I see, sir. Yeah, like I said, I said I would like if you guys would entertain a temporary, just showing during certain hours or during certain business hours, and I'd scope it down to 2 or 3 machines, but it really would be beneficial. That corridor carries the soccer field traffic. That 10,000 traffic count a day is really imperative for advertising. So if somebody could see clear to say, hey, 2 machines during the hours of.
Excuse me, that's not part of the motion.
Okay, sorry.
The motion stands, the second stands. We see no more discussion. All in favor? Oops.
I'd like to make a substitute motion that during the hours of operation, that at least 10, let's say at least 8 lawnmowers can be displayed.
No more than?
Up to 8 lawnmowers could be
Why don't we
displayed.
ask him if he'll accept that? No. Okay, so it's substitute motion.
Motion.
Everything else is same.
Yep.
With the not to exceed 8 lawnmowers.
That's too many, I think.
Anybody gonna second that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. We have a motion and a second. We'll vote on a substitute motion first. Any more discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor of the substitute motion? Aye. Let's see a show of hands. It's 6-3. 6-3, it passes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That was beneficial to you.
And I'm sorry, gentlemen, I'm again new and foreign to this.
Excuse me.
Get with Mr. Year out.
Okay, yeah, so that was my next. I didn't know what to do next. That was my next question. Thank you.
Kathy Morgan, come forward and do item number 10. No.
Please go outside to ask your questions of Mr. Year out. We've got another case.
Groundwater contamination, check with Mr. Year out, and he'll give you the right government
We're
agency
still
that handles
conducting a
that.
meeting. We're still conducting a meeting.
So you can talk to him.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, are we ready?
Get away.
Kathy Morgan for planning staff. This is a request for a zone change from SF5 to TF3 located between Nevada and Doherty
Excuse me
Avenue.
a second, Kathy.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me a minute. Is there anybody here to speak on this item?
Yeah, we are. We're over here.
Oh, you moved, okay.
There is, yes, we are going to be quick because currently, I'm just going to jump to the pictures of what is there now. It is a residential area. This is the property. This is the main structure, and then this house on the east is like a pool house. It is not developed for any kind of living capabilities. So the applicant has asked for the TF3 zoning so that they can redevelop this structure, this pool house structure, into a single-family house situation. If you go back to the aerial, you can see the main structure is on the lot to the west, and then the pool house is on the lot to the east. At this time, there is no plan to build out put in additional duplexes or housing units here. They just want to be able to convert this pool house into a residential structure. This request does follow the comprehensive plan with infill for residential development. It is within the established central area. Staff is recommending approval of the request to TF3, and with that, the applicant, the agent for the applicant and a neighbor would like to proffer a protective overlay for that the agent is in agreement with. So I will answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Richardson.
Kathy, since the pool house is on a second lot, could it not be developed as a residence right now?
It's considered one zoning lot because the applicant owns both lots.
Both lots, okay.
And it doesn't meet the setback standards.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Morgan? Seeing none, agent or applicant, you have 10 minutes, but I certainly hope you don't take.
I won't take 10 minutes. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, thank you very much. You have my written report that outlines the reasons why. I'd like to make sure that gets read in the record so I don't have to go through Policy 10. As we sat waiting for the other case, there was a gentleman that happens to live in the property, and he lives in the property immediately to the north. He was not concerned about the development of the pool house, but the possible development of the vacant area. The likelihood that this young couple will do that in the near future is slim. So we are very happy to accommodate his main concern, which is that no new duplexes be constructed on that property, and we offer that as a protective overlay so that what we're asking for is the TF3 zoning be approved. I think the attorney has approved our ability to do that at this meeting, and that there would be a protective overlay that would restrict this property to no new duplex construction without coming back and removing the protective overlay. I'll be glad to answer any questions. The pool house already meets the requirements for a dwelling unit with kitchen, bathroom. They have done some work on it as far as remodeling some of the walls and windows and some of those things, but it could have been, when they bought it, been used for that. So we believe that it's appropriate. Be glad to answer any questions. I'm not going to take a lot of your time.
Seeing no questions, anybody would like to speak on this item?
I believe the neighbor would like to.
Sat there so long that my feet went to sleep. Promise we don't intend to take 2 hours. What our concern is that no duplexes will be built there. Now, I'm sorry. I'm Frank Schofler, Schofler. I live at 809 North Nevada, Wichita, Kansas 67211. What they're proposing, if that overlay says they cannot build duplexes there, then we have no objection to what they're wanting to do. Our objection is we do not want duplexes on both ends of that. Single-family housing, wonderful. Duplexes, no. So,
Questions?
yeah. I don't get 2 hours.
You actually get 16, oh no, you already got more time.
My time.
Now, do we bring it back to the committee?
Would approve with protective overlay?
Second.
A motion by Mr. Warren, seconded by Mr. Klausmeyer. And any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.